MSW Media.
So yeah, now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 218 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It's Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. I'm Allison Gill.
Hey, AG. I'm Harry Dunn. We have a lot to cover today, including a judge refusing to allow Donald Trump, the Trump Department of Justice, to pardon a January 6th rioter of unrelated crimes and a January 6th rioter charged with civil disorder and assault with a dangerous weapon is running for Marco Rubio's vacant seat.
Okay. All right. If that's who you want.
Right.
Also, Elon Musk is now paying Wisconsin voters $100 each to sign a petition denouncing activist judges in an attempt to buy the Wisconsin Supreme Court seat. He did this by putting people in a lottery to win $1 million to sign a petition back during the general election. And so I'm interested to know what he or Doge or his little minions are doing with those data that are entered by voters, to sign that petition.
Yeah. He did this similarly in Pennsylvania, I believe, during the general election for the Harris-Trump race. So
yeah, that's what I was talking about when entered people in that Pennsylvania lottery.
Yeah.
So he's doing that, and we're going to talk about that and some of the work you're doing in Wisconsin. And we have a brief update on Eric Adams. No Rudy again. He's staying out of the news, laying low. Might be drunk on the floor somewhere. But first, we have some new patrons to thank. And before we get to our new patrons, I just wanted to thank everybody who came out to the Darrell Issa Empty Chair Town Hall, organized by Indivisible North County, San Diego. That happened yesterday. I was honored that they asked me to host this event. There were it ended up in total being about 850 people there. About 700 in the room, about 150 in overflow. I'm not sure exactly the split between the room and the overflow, but total of about 850 people. And thanks to CBS 8, local San Diego news, for covering it. We had a really, really productive empty chair town hall. So I saw some
of the videos from it. It looked like a lot of people there, and energy was palpable, obviously, from what I saw. So shout out to you, getting in some good trouble. I love that.
Yeah, and I got to meet a lot of good, awesome cleanup and Daily Beans patrons who were there in the crowd. So thank you.
Love that.
And let's see. Let's get back to thanking our patrons, because none of this would be possible without our patrons. You can sign up to become a patron at patreon.com/aisle45pod. That's AISLE45POD. So huge thanks to our new patrons, Reen Rocks, Terry Hudson, Patty, and Joy Mararar. Now, starting next week, we're going to split our Hall of Fame patron shout outs throughout the month. Because we have like 50 or 60 Hall of Fame patrons.
That's a good problem to have.
It is. And reading them all in one show is a little tough. It takes up a lot of time. So we're going to split those throughout the month so the Hall of Fame patrons get their monthly shout out as promised for signing up to be a Hall of Fame patron. Yeah. So thank you so much. Again, we couldn't do this without you. So Harry, where should we begin today?
Well, so much, but let's start with the most recent ruling on a January 6th defendant. All right, he's trying to get his unrelated crimes pardoned. Law and Crime reports a January 6th defendant who tried using President Donald Trump's mass pardon to get released early from prison for gun crime discovered by the FBI during its investigation of the U.S. Capitol attack will be staying in the clink, with a federal judge on Friday choosing to keep the Maryland native behind bars, saying he simply asked to be let out, but does not provide a basis for doing so.
This is Elias Kostianis, I believe is how you say his name, formerly of Nottingham, was sentenced to serve 24 months in prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release after he entered a guilty plea in September 2023 for possession of firearms and ammunition by an unlawful user of any controlled substance. That's according to the Justice Department. Authorities caught him with illegal drugs and multiple weapons during a 2021 raid of his home. Constianis joined a litany of other January 6 defendants earlier this month when he filed a consent motion to stay his sentence and asked to be released in response to rulings made in other January 6 cases by judges who have started to throw out cases that they say are related to Trump's pardon, but they're not.
They're
At
not.
least 3 judges, though, have tossed out pending cases for January 6 defendants, including Guy Reffitt, an alleged rioter accused of carrying a gun to the Capitol, who was later caught with an illegal silencer in Texas. The Department of Justice has also started voicing its approval of such dismissals in recent weeks and months, saying it agrees that Trump's mass pardon covers related crimes in at least 7 cases across the country.
Total BS. But some judges have also drawn lines in the legal sand, like U.S. District Judge James Keller Bretter, who on Friday told Constianis that his arguments had failed to cross them. In fact, Bretter, a Barack Obama appointee, pointed out how Constianis didn't really seem to have any argument. Of course he didn't.
I have no arguments. The judge said, before this court, the parties now seek a stay of Constianis' sentence and his release pending disposition by the Fourth Circuit. The parties point to Federal Rule of Appellate Procedure 8C, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 38, and Title 18 U.S. Code Section 3143B1 in support of their argument that he should be released from prison. Federal Rule of Appellate Procedure 8C provides that a stay in a criminal case is governed by Rule 38 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, which in turn provides that the appeal is not for the purpose of delay and raises a substantial question of law or fact likely to result in reversal, an order for a new trial, a sentence that does not include a term of imprisonment, or a reduced sentence. So he's like, you're circularly reasoning here by saying it's this and then it's that, and it relies on this and it relies on that, and there's really no substance.
There's no substance to it. But according to Bretter, Constianis failed miserably, like we thought, at proving this point. On top of ignoring the questions that the U.S. Court of Appeals of the Fourth Circuit had asked him to answer, the judge said, as he's already appealing his sentence with the Virginia Appeals Court for his guilty plea, the former Maryland resident confessed to being in possession of marijuana and 4 vials containing testosterone, both controlled substances, along with a 9mm pistol, an MP-15 semi-automatic rifle, a .223 caliber semi-automatic rifle, and a 12-gauge shotgun, as well as thousands of rounds of ammunition. What is this guy doing? According to the DOJ investigators, including, they found 9mm, 22 caliber, .223 caliber, and shotgun cartridges.
Okay, so pot and testosterone.
And a lot of ammo.
And a lot of guns and ammo. Is that what they tried to, got Hunter Biden for? I'm not sure.
Can't keep up, right?
Here's a quote from the judge. He does not explain why it is likely that his conviction will be vacated on appeal. Indeed, it's not entirely clear on what basis he even seeks a vacatur of his sentence on appeal, given that the currently pending joint motion before the Fourth Circuit simply asked the Fourth Circuit to vacate the defendant's conviction, but does not provide a basis for doing so. And although it cites the pardon, the parties explicitly did not respond to the Fourth Circuit's question or questions regarding the pardon. So he was like, hey, Fourth Circuit, let me out of jail for this gun and drug thing because of the pardon. And they were like, well, tell us how the pardon covers this. And he was like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's literally, I don't know.
So Bretter explained in his ruling that Constianis was given the simple task of answering 3 questions, quote, separate and apart from the issues of mootness. These 3 questions are about whether the court has jurisdiction to consider and whether it's prudent for the court to consider Constianis' motion in the absence of any ruling by the district court, whether the court has the authority to review and interpret Trump's pardon, and whether the pardon applies in this case, as a conviction related to the events that occurred at or near the Capitol. And the judge said, rather than respond to those simple questions, the parties filed a joint motion to vacate conviction and remand for dismissal. That's what the judge said. He goes on to say the parties again cited the pardon and explained that, quote, after further considering this case in light of the court's questions, the government has determined that the more efficient and prudent course, and the one most consistent with Trump's instructions, is to move to vacate Mr. Constianis' conviction under Rule 48A. So not how the pardon covers it, just we think it does.
I think it does, and just say, hey, you know what, it does, and that's good enough for us. Trump's DOJ, however, has veered away from supporting certain January 6th cases and pardons with more serious charges, most notably for January 6th defendants Edward Kelly and Taylor Taranto, who were each accused of plotting to commit violence. Kelly was arrested in 2022 for allegedly plotting to kill FBI agents who investigated him. Taranto allegedly threatened lawmakers and showed up to Barack Obama's home in Washington, D.C. back in 2023, toting guns, ammunition, and supplies for an explosive device.
Yeah, so some of these guys can be pardoned, but some of them can't, or some of their related crimes, but nobody explains how they're related. Yeah.
How, exactly.
Now, Kelly, who's a Tennessee resident and was charged there, tried claiming that his federal murder plot case and 2024 conviction in the volunteer state was related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol of January 6, 2021. He filed a motion to dismiss his indictment and vacate his jury convictions on January 27th, 1 week after Trump gave his pardon. And the DOJ urged U.S. District Judge Thomas Varlin last month to maintain Kelly's conviction, right? This is the guy who plotted to kill the FBI agents in Tennessee. They were condemning his claims as wrong, and Kelly himself for having no authority to support his position. And on March 10th, Judge Varlin, a G.W. Bush appointee, agreed and ruled in favor of rejecting Kelly's court bid to get his murder plot conviction covered by Trump's pardon, saying none of the substantive offenses or charging provisions overlap. They don't overlap in a way that Kelly has claimed in filings. So some judges are like, nope, this one doesn't count. Other judges are like, yeah, this one we can throw out.
It's really no rhyme or reason to apparently why they're doing it. But in Toronto's case, DOJ prosecutors insisted that his actions were not offenses occurring at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, nor were they related to the 2021 riot after Toronto filed a motion to dismiss weapons charges against him. U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols, a Trump appointee, denied Toronto's request last month. His lawyer, Carmen D. Hernandez, has tried arguing that since the government filed his weapon charges with his other crimes in one big indictment, prosecutors implicitly determined that the gun charges were related to his January 6th charges.
Okay.
Could that be, I mean, it's general practice of, prosecutors lumping multiple charges together. But I think those cases could have stood alone. Those charges could have stood alone, even if they didn't, lump them together. So
yeah, and there was no reason for prosecutors to separate them out because they're like, well, if Trump pardons him for January 6th, it's not going to cover this. People shouldn't have to consider when they consolidate cases whether or not a Trump pardon is going to cover a totally unrelated crime.
Correct.
Because the president can just step in and say, I pardon Toronto for the stuff he did near Obama's house too, and then that would clarify everything and the courts wouldn't have a choice.
Correct, which he did not do. So, yeah.
So I'm glad some of these judges are rejecting them. Others
they all need
so
to be
much.
Rejected.
Yeah. One judge took herself off the case because she didn't want to. She refused to, and the chief judge did it because
that was in California, wasn't it?
Yeah. And that was because the DOJ, basically, I don't know if they had more footing, but I guess that one had to be dismissed. I'm not sure. These are different circuits, and so maybe if some conflict comes up between circuits, it can be settled at the Supreme Court level as to whether these pardons cover these other things. And if one of these cases makes it up to the Supreme Court level, we'll definitely let you know what they decide. I mean, yeah. Anyway.
I mean, they shouldn't, but, here we are,
Yeah, and we've had so many January 6th rioters and election deniers. First, a bunch of them were electors for Republicans. They served as electors again, even though they were caught in the fraudulent elector scheme in the general election last November. And now we've had January 6ers run for office, and now we have another one running for office, and we're going to talk about that. But we have to take a quick break, so stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, it's Harry. Look, honestly, meal planning has always been my downfall. Every year, every month, every week, I'll say I'll get better at it. But life gets busy, and next thing you know, I'm back to my takeout habits. Pizza, wings, tacos. But that's why I'm so excited about Marley Spoon. It's the first meal kit that's actually worked for me. With our code CLEANUP, you can get up to 27 free meals. Marley Spoon's new 15-minute express recipes are perfect for those nights when you need dinner fast. And if you got a little more time, their 20-minute options are just as delicious. I love their sheet pan dinners. Just throw everything in one pan, pop it in the oven, and dinner's done. Their tray bakes are equally convenient, and they even include the tray. On days when I'm too tired to cook, they're ready to heat meals, save the day. Marley Spoon slow cooker recipes are one of my favorites. You just toss everything in, go about the day, and come back to a meal that tastes like it's been simmering all day. The best part? I'm cooking more, stressing less, and eating better. My favorite recent meal was their big batch beef stroganoff. It was so comforting and flavorful, and I couldn't believe I made it. I did, myself. With over 100 recipes to choose from each week, Marley Spoon has something for every mood. Whether you're craving cozy comfort food or something light and fresh, they've got you covered. Give it a try. You won't regret it. This new year, fast track your way to eating well with Marley Spoon. Head to marleyspoon.com/offer/cleanup and use code cleanup for up to 27 free meals. That's right, 27 free meals with Marley Spoon. Just go to marleyspoon.com/offer/cleanup with promo code cleanup. All right, y'all, welcome back. All right, and talking about WTF news, January 6th defendants, right? Jake Lang says he has formally entered the race to fill Secretary of State Marco Rubio's former Senate seat in Florida. Lang was charged in January 2021 in a 2021 indictment with 2 counts of civil disorder, 1 count of assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers, and 1 count of assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers using a dangerous weapon.
But I was told that it was an unarmed event, and it was just a peaceful gathering of visitors.
A day of love, yeah.
It was a day of love. Well, that's
Yeah.
what these Tesla,
right?
protests are, right? Just a day of love.
Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, when President-elect Donald Trump announced Rubio as his nominee for Secretary of State, it created that vacancy down there for a U.S. senator in Florida. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis then appointed the state's Republican Attorney General, Ashley Moody, to take over the role temporarily until the 2026 general election. After returning to office on January 20th, Trump has made sweeping changes, mainly through executive orders. And in one of his orders, Trump granted clemency to more than 1,500 people charged or convicted that were related to the U.S. Capitol riot on January 6th. And Trump signed the pardons on the same day as his inauguration.
Yeah, in a post on Twitter, because it's always going to be Twitter, on Monday, Lang said, "Today, I am blessed by God to officially announce my candidacy for U.S. Senate in the great state of Florida. The story of the January 6 hostages isn't over. It's just begun." The January 6th story has just begun. What the hell? The golden age of America is here. We are taking over the Capitol again. This time as America's public servants and elected leaders. Lang went on to recount his time behind bars. The January 6ers have been chosen and made for such a time as this. The time to reclaim every branch of our republic is now.
Now, Newsweek published some reactions to this announcement of Lang running for Senate. Former Republican congressional candidate Laverne Spicer replied to Lang's Twitter post saying, "I'm so excited Jake Lang is running for U.S. Senate right here in Florida." And then conservative commentator Joey Manorino, never heard of this person, said on Monday, quote, "Jake Lang was locked up for 4 years in a J6 gulag. Now he's running for Senate to take the Capitol back for the people. Let's go." I mean, I guess at least he's doing it legally.
Yeah, I
He's
guess.
trying to take over the Capitol, like through a legal or at least an election, rather than with his dangerous weapons.
Yeah, it goes on. Jake Hoffman, the executive director of the Tampa Bay Young Republicans, told the Florida Phoenix every cycle both parties have insane candidates with less than 0% chance of winning. That's so funny. With less than 0% chance of winning their race. But they do it anyway. This is one of those cases. Florida political analyst Craig Arganoff told Newsweek via text message on Tuesday, as a political phenom, Lang's announcement to run for the Florida Senate reflects the ongoing reverberations of January 6th within American electoral politics.
Yeah, and she went on to say, quote, "His candidacy raises intriguing questions about the intersection of legal accountability, public perception, and political ambition in a test case for whether a figure tied to such a polarizing event can leverage that identity into a viable campaign, particularly in a state like Florida with its complex and evolving political landscape. Historically, controversial figures have sought to transform notoriety into influence. And whether he succeeds will depend on how voters weigh his past actions against his current platform.
Yeah, the election for Rubio's old seat is set for the general election on November 3rd, 2026. Listen, I mean, this is me. I ran for Congress because of what happened on January 6th. And, the statement said earlier, you said the candidacy raises intriguing questions about the intersection of legal accountability, public perception, and political ambition. Look, when I ran, it was just, hey, listen, I realized I had a platform, I had a story to tell, and I had a reason to keep fighting. The difference between this individual and myself, sure, event was the catalyst of, us running. However, he's doing it to try to clear his name. He still believes that he was right, whereas I was there serving my country and showing up and defending people that I didn't agree with. And it's crazy because, yeah, he's using an experience that, happened to him. That the difference is between what happened to him and what happened to me is he's responsible for what happened to him, whereas I just showed up and did my job and got criticized, attacked for wanting better. So it's very intriguing. But WTF news.
Yeah, WTF news. And kind of like in, Wisconsin, we're going to get to see whether Elon's money is more powerful than Democrats' ground game and messaging, right? In the Supreme Court race there. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But this is another instance of how will, because they haven't done well in the past. Former January 6th or January 6th rioters haven't done well in the past.
Yeah.
But Florida's different, I mean, they elected Marco Rubio. So,
Hello.
But I thought it was really interesting where that one.
Well, Marco used to be apparently it's some kind of decent, like he stood up to Donald Trump in 2015, leading up to the 2016 election. But you see how he caved and turned coward. But I digress.
But like this guy was like, yeah, sometimes there's just crazy ass candidates that have 0% chance. And that seemed like this. And so, we'll follow it to see if he gets the nomination. We're still over a year and a half away from this, from the 2026 midterms. But that'll be interesting. I'm always like, yeah, I hope he gets it because I would love to run against a January 6th.
Yeah, right. But it also, listen, what happened in New Mexico with the guy Coy Griffin? He was barred from holding office and running for office under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which a lot of people are still hoping there's a possibility of Donald Trump being held to that standard too. But in Florida, I mean, who's going to, one, bring that lawsuit? I'm sure you find people that could bring it. But secondly, who would uphold it? So
yeah, generally it's the state board of elections. I'm pretty sure that's true across the board. Although some Republicans in some states are trying to give the power over elections to the legislatures. I haven't looked to see if Florida has successfully tried or done that yet. But it's either way, it's going to be a bunch of Republicans.
Well, we saw that too. Isn't that what they attempted to do with when they had Marjorie Taylor Greene testify out in was that Colorado, I believe?
Alabama.
Yeah.
Colorado was the just Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
And New Mexico was Coy Griffin, and New Mexico won. The good guys won and got him removed for being an insurrectionist. But in Alabama, they were like, she's not an insurrectionist, so it kind of is up to each individual state.
And like you said, we know how Florida is.
Yeah, we know how Florida is. All right, as promised, next up, we're going to talk about Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Harry, you've been heavily involved in this race because, among other things, one of the two people running for this seat supports Trump and Musk, and specifically supports Trump's pardon of the January 6th insurrectionists. And I mean, all around, he's just terrible. But you were like, hey, I got one litmus test. And it's whether or not you agree with the pardons, and this guy fails just on that alone.
Just on the face alone. So can't wait to talk about that more in depth when we come back after this break.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Let's head over to Wisconsin with this reporting from MSNBC. In what feels like the basic plot of several dystopian films, the world's richest man is doling out heaps of cash to try to impose his will over the U.S. court system, as several of his efforts to hack away at crucial government programs face pushback from dismayed judges. The New York Times was first to report on Trump megadonor Elon Musk's donations of several $1,000s to numerous congressional Republicans who support the illiberal idea of impeaching judges who rule against components of Trump and Trump's agenda. And Musk has taken a particular interest in the upcoming Wisconsin Supreme Court election, and he's shoveling out money in ways that only an oligarch can.
Yeah. NBC News reports that Musk's super PAC, America PAC, is the top outside spender in the Wisconsin race with about $6.6 million spent. Various outlets have reported that Musk previously donated millions of dollars to the third biggest outside spender in that race. And on Thursday, Axios reported that Musk's super PAC has begun offering Wisconsin voters $100 to sign a petition expressing their opposition to activist judges, a cause that President Trump is pressing as judges block or delay several parts of his agenda. Thank you to those judges that are standing up and being a guardrail for democracy. But this resembles the $1 million daily giveaway that America PAC conducted in swing states during last year's presidential race.
Yeah, and I have to wonder what he's doing with this information that he gets from voters when they sign these petitions and he pays them. Does he send them text messages like, bro, I paid you, get out and vote? Or does he use it somehow to, I don't know, do more nefarious things in elections? I can't imagine it. But here's the text of the petition. Judges should interpret laws as written, not rewrite them to fit their personal or political agendas. By signing below, I'm rejecting the actions of activist judges who impose their own views and demanding a judiciary that respects its role, interpreting, not legislating. Axios reported that Musk's team won't know whether or how signees vote, but the $100 offer does open the door for some fairly easy cost-benefit analysis.
Goes to your point. What is that information? What is he doing with that information? Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the Wisconsin election, which is being portrayed as a bellwether of the broader country's stance towards Musk and Trump's haphazard gutting of the federal government, voters can choose to take the $100 and essentially endorse the goal of usurping judges' powers. But the long-term cost, if Musk and the MAGA movement succeed on that front and defund vital programs that millions of Americans rely on, seems certain to exceed $100 by far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If, for example, you're an American who relies on Social Security, the Trump administration is threatening to imperil that. Or if you rely on the services provided by the tens of thousands of employees at the Department of Veterans Affairs who could see their jobs eliminated, $100 may seem measly in exchange for endorsing a movement pushing for deep cuts to the programs you hold dear. Musk's offer is putting Wisconsinites to the test. It's up to them to do the math. And, this is just, I don't know, it's fishy as fuck. What is he doing with the information? Because when you sign that petition, you got to enter your ish.
Yeah.
Your info.
Yeah. I don't know, address, email address. I mean, if people are getting money from it, it's probably more intrusive than just a simple petition because you have to get something. They have to know where to send it. Mm-hmm. Is it banking information? Is it electronic? Is it a one-time deposit? What about people without bank accounts? Does they send them their home address and mail them a check? I mean, it's so many questions that come with this. But listen, that's all the deep dive questions. When simply put, this is an individual trying to buy an election. Right. Simply put, that's what this is. And not only is an individual trying to buy an election, you have a judge that is a candidate for judge, Supreme Court that is welcoming this. I mean, if that just doesn't scream corruption at the highest levels, decibel level, I don't know what does. You have a candidate that is welcoming, encouraging Elon Musk help to get him in office. And you talk about somebody being bought. This is literally the definition of it. And then as you all are listening to this on Thursday, I'll be headed out there. Being on the ground, I actually will be at an event where the candidate, Bradley Schimmel, will be speaking at. Well, I'll be out there on the protest lines with a lot of Wisconsinites, Wisconsin's. Hopefully they'll have some cheese curds out there ready for me. But I will be out there holding up signs, talking to press. I don't have $100 for y'all, but I will give you a big old hairy hug.
Nice.
Listen, it's important to be out there. And I'm told that I'm going to be joining an event with former Senator Sherrod Brown. And it's some rumors that Governor Pritzker will be joining us also on Friday, the day after. So stay tuned. I will have some live updates with how that's going on my Substack, on Blue Sky. I'll be putting out updates and videos. But like I just said, Allison, this is literally the definition of buying an election. And it's being welcomed and received by the candidate.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that folks will call up the Wisconsin Attorney General and ask him to open up an investigation into this to see if it violates any of Wisconsin's state election laws. Because I know it violates federal election laws, but Pam Bondi's not going to do shit about it. So maybe give your attorney general a call there in Wisconsin and say, hey, can you look into this?
His name is Josh Call, by the way, guys. Josh Call. And if everybody wants his number, it's 608-266-1221. Attorney General Josh Call, so from Wisconsin.
Thank you. Something else I wanted to ask you about, Harry. This is from Democracy Docket. As you know, we had to, Jack Smith had to give up those 2 criminal investigations into January 6th and the classified documents case. The Supreme Court, with the help of the Supreme Court, who immunized him from the January 6th case. But we still had 2 civil cases, right? One from a group of Capitol Police officers, and one from like Swalwell and his pals in Congress. And I think Benny Thompson was on that case, but he had to withdraw because he was the head of the January 6th Select Committee. So, there's a little conflict of interest there.
Yeah.
Because, we do that. We withdraw when there's conflicts of interest.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
So now the DOJ has told a federal judge that the United States should take Trump's place as the defendant in these civil lawsuits seeking to hold him accountable for January 6th. If successful, the substitution could shield Trump from facing judgment in lawsuits brought by police officers and lawmakers who argue that his actions contributed to the harm that they suffered in the Capitol attack. The unusual move comes amid the Trump administration's larger effort to erode the Department of Justice's long-established independence from the president to advance his political and personal interests. Now, for the substitution to occur, DOJ officials must convince a judge, and in this case, it's Judge Amit Mehta, the judge overseeing these lawsuits. They have to convince him that the U.S. must be the defendant because Trump was acting in his official capacity as president January 6th. Now, in the January 6th criminal cases, we didn't get a chance to hear Judge Chuck can rule on what was considered an official act and what were unofficial acts. Because she was ruling on that court for immunity, right? That would have had to go back up to this. Once she ruled, that would have to go back all the way up to the Supreme Court for them to agree or disagree with what she thinks were official acts or not. But that's in the immunity case. This is for whether or not he can be sued in these civil cases and whether the DOJ can sub in. And the DOJ argument, it rests on federal law and Supreme Court precedent that prevents personal civil lawsuits against federal officials acting within the scope of their duties.
Yeah. And as everybody knows, like I said, with the Supreme Court, ruled that immunity thing. But that's the thing. We get around to what was considered official acts related to January 6th. Judge Mehta previously allowed civil lawsuits to go forward by denying the argument that Trump was acting in his official capacity on January 6th. A federal appeals court later, this is a big word here, largely agreed with Mehta, though said additional fact findings should take place to determine exactly if certain actions were done by Trump, the president, or Trump, the re-election candidate. And listen, I think that's, you know what? Sure. Let's open that can of worms and let's continue to rehash and litigate in the public eye Donald Trump's despicable behavior on January 6th. You know what? Sure. Let's go ahead and relitigate that because the whole world knows exactly. The whole world knows. Unfortunately, they didn't seem to care enough on November the 5th. And that still just sticks in my craw. I like saying that word, sticks in my craw. But yeah, people knew. But yeah, let's keep on embarrassing the hell out of Donald Trump. And that's why Donald Trump is still make January 6th a big deal. And let's continue to embarrass him, and not even embarrass him, just hold his feet to the flames about January 6th. And you know what? Sure, if that's what you want to do. Now, I don't know what kind of judge would rule to allow the DOJ. I mean, what are the grounds for allowing the DOJ to take the place of the president?
Well, that's it, as if he was acting in his official duties.
Correct. But, and he'll argue that he was.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
But I look forward to that. And I think when there are court dates set for that, Allison, if you're in town, I would love to let's go sit in that courtroom and listen to that and take notes and report. But I think that's going to be some I would say must see TV, but those aren't televised. But must listen to podcasts. Oh yeah, I want to say must listen to podcasts, because we're definitely going to be talking about that. So.
Yeah, and if Meta denies this, motion to have the DOJ substitute for Trump, which I have every reason to believe he will, because he's already denied the motion to dismiss or stop the lawsuits from going forward on these same grounds, right? Because Trump was like, no, it's official, and Meta was like, it was not official, bro. I'm letting these lawsuits go forward, and now if maybe he goes in deeper and looks at a couple of the tweets, some of the things that Trump was arguing in more detail, like in the Jack Smith stuff, like, oh, my tweet at this time was presidential, and my tweet at this time was campaign and unofficial and whatever. Maybe he'll dig a little bit deeper. But I imagine eventually, I think Meta will say no, and I think the DC Circuit will say no, and then it'll get to the Supreme Court, and then we'll get to see how the Supreme Court would have ruled on Jack Smith's idea that nothing in his indictment
covered official acts.
We're official.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting, because then we'll be able to know that the Supreme Court was what I've always thought was never going to let the January 6th case go to trial. Yeah,
and that's so funny that talking about that, having the opportunity, because if this does happen, it's potential that Jack Smith's going to be called as a witness. And would Jack Smith have to testify? And that just prompted me to just put on Blue Sky a message. I wonder what Jack Smith's doing. I miss him. So
yeah, I'm not sure he'd be called to testify in a motion to sub out the DOJ, but I'm sure his filings will be cited a lot as to what's official acts and what's not.
If it goes to the Supreme Court, or in general, or only if it goes to the Supreme Court.
Well, this is just there's usually no testimony in higher courts appeal stuff. So, I just imagine that they'll be not only citing Jack Smith and Jack Smith's reasoning why none of this was official, at least to the extent of what's talked about in these civil suits, what overlaps in the Venn diagram of these civil suits. But that, there might also be a citation to Judge Chutkan's initial ruling that none of this is subject to presidential immunity, because she was the first to deny immunity based on official acts. And so I imagine her finding, before this went up to the Supreme Court, before they had immunity arguments, will be cited too. It's going to be interesting to see. But I have a feeling Meta is going to be like, dude, I said already that these aren't official acts, and I'm saying it again. So go ahead and appeal if you want.
Do we have an idea for when this timetable is going to occur, or?
No, I don't think this is an expedited thing, but I'm imagining he might rule pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out.
Well, stay tuned, because we'll definitely be following that one. So
yeah, me too. All right, no Rudy news today, but we do have some Eric Adams.
I'm about to say we got another New York imbecile to cover, right?
Right. We always end in New York, right? That's the thing. Whether I was hoping it was going to be Bannon, but nope. Well, we're up with Eric Adams, and as of this moment of this recording, I'm just checking here. Eric Adams, Judge Ho. No, we still don't have a decision from Judge Ho on whether he's going to dismiss these charges, but we'll talk about that after this quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, y'all, welcome back. Like we said, we don't have any Rudy updates, but there is zero shortage of idiots in New York. No offense, New York. I love New York, but y'all got some dumb criminals up
Republicans,
there.
yeah. And I think Eric Adams is a Republican. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so wolf in sheep's clothes, right? You know, but like you said, we have we have an update on New York Mayor Eric Adams from the Times. On the day after President Trump's inauguration, Eric Adams' deputy mayor for communications assembled officials from across city government to let them know that change was coming. The deputy mayor, Fabian Levy, instructed agencies to highlight their work in a positive way, but signaled that they should not criticize Mr. Trump's policies, according to 3 people who participated in the meetings in January.
Oh, Fabian Levy, deputy mayor, obeying in advance. Mr. Levy created a, quote, federal response tracker, a spreadsheet to log statements and social media requests from agencies so that he and the mayor's office could vet each request. And that's according to 2 people familiar with the spreadsheet. It has columns listing the agency, the federal issue in question, proposed language, and whether it's been approved. The mayor's office has avoided discussing know your rights guidance on how immigrants should respond to federal immigration officials and gender-affirming healthcare for transgender people. That's according to one of the people who spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of retribution. So in this spreadsheet, they're being told, don't tell people about their rights, their immigration rights, and don't give thumbs up to gender-affirming healthcare for transgender people.
And condition of anonymity for fear of retribution.
That's always, I mean, that should just be at the top of every story that ever is published. It should say, the people who talk to us are anonymous because they're
scared they're going to get attacked, you know. Yeah. The tracker is consistent with Mr. Adams' stance since Mr. Trump took office. The mayor said in January that he would not publicly criticize the president and told top aides in February to also refrain from doing so over fear that such criticism could provoke Mr. Trump to withhold federal funding for the city's priorities.
Yeah, or make him not dismiss my charges.
I like that latter, you know. Many institutions have already faced threats or actions from the Trump administration that jeopardize its funding. Mr. Trump canceled $400 million in federal funds for Columbia University, prompting the university to make remarkable concessions to his administration and has threatened major cuts for the subway.
Yeah, and by the way, that $400 million to Columbia University, I think it was like decades ago, Columbia University failed to enter a $400 million real estate deal with Trump. And so
I saw that.
Yeah, so he's holding a grudge there. But Mr. Adams may have more personal motivation, you think? He's been accused of agreeing to a quid pro quo with the Trump administration. With the Justice Department moving to drop his 5-count federal indictment, Mr. Adams would be free to help the president enforce his immigration policies. The mayor denies the corruption allegations and the assertions that he engaged in a quid pro quo. Mr. Adams has argued that adopting a more pragmatic approach to dealing with Trump is wiser than risking antagonizing him, a stance others are beginning to adopt. Lawyers for NYU Langone Health, a leading hospital system in Manhattan, proposed removing references to diverse students and systemic racism from the hospital's website last month to avoid funding cuts.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we saw down here in Washington, D.C. with the removal of Black Lives Matter Plaza. There have been potholes sitting in D.C. streets for 20 years, but that plaza got taken up within 2 days of Donald Trump's request of it. But I digress. You know, a spokeswoman for Mr. Adams acknowledged that the mayor's office uses federal tracker as a part of organizational strategy to streamline media requests for the administration's responses. But she asserted that Mr. Levy never said anything about not criticizing Trump or his policies during the meeting in January and insisted that the mayor would continue to be the first and loudest advocate for New Yorkers. All right. Everyday New Yorkers aren't turning in to hear City Hall's hot takes on Washington politics, she said in a statement. They want to know if their trash will be collected, if their kids will get a good education, and if their neighborhood is safe. And a lot of that depends on federal dollars.
Yeah, bro. If you've got ICE raids and you're sending people to Rikers, then your neighborhood's not safe. Are you talking about the neighborhood safe for white people?
Yeah, exactly. Who are we talking about, you know?
I mean, my God. So Eric Adams' stance toward the Trump administration on immigration and other issues has angered many Democratic leaders in New York and led to the resignation of 4 deputy mayors. We've talked about this, and it's also led to friction within his administration. When the National Park Service eliminated references to transgender people from the website of the Stonewall National Monument in Manhattan last month, many Democratic officials immediately expressed their indignation. Kathy Hochul called the decision cruel and petty. But Eric Adams waited more than 24 hours before posting about its historical significance and offering kind of general vague support for trans New Yorkers.
I wonder if he had to call and get guidance from the administration to see, hey, I'm going to say this. Is this okay? The mayor's muted response was one factor that led members of the city's Commission on Gender Equity to issue an ultimatum to Mr. Adams that they would resign if he did not lay out a strategy for defending transgender New Yorkers, women, and immigrants.
Yeah. Now, Andrea Hagelgans, a member of the commission who was appointed by Adams and a former senior advisor to Bill de Blasio, she resigned, writing in a letter that the group had raised concerns over the mayor's troubling actions and statements and was met with silence. Sadea Sherman, the city's chief equity officer, later responded with a 5-page letter defending the mayor's record, including noting that Mr. Adams signed an executive order in 2023 to protect gender-affirming care.
Yeah, in January, when Mr. Trump signed an executive order seeking to prevent schools from recognizing transgender identities, city officials discussed issuing a strong statement to support transgender students or having the mayor film a video response in the Blue Room, according to emails obtained by the New York Times. Ann Williams-Ism, the deputy mayor for Health and Human Services, signed off on some of the messaging, according to the emails, but no statement was ever made.
Oh, yeah. Quote, Eric Adams has perpetuated a true bait and switch on New York voters. That's what Christine Quinn, the former city council speaker who runs a major homeless shelter network, has to say. She went on to say, he ran as someone who supported sanctuary cities and supported the LGBTQ plus community, and now he's sold his soul to Trump and is attempting to erode New York City's sanctuary status, and he's abandoning the transgender community at their time of need.
Yeah, listen, immigration has been one of the most fraught issues. The mayor who once vowed that New York was going to be a sanctuary city plus, under his leadership, has now called for weakening the city's sanctuary city laws and agreed to allow federal immigration officials at the Rikers Island jail complex. I wonder what changed.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because they were going to keep them, not send immigrants to Rikers, but allow ICE into Rikers. Yeah, which they had promised not to do.
Exactly.
And though we still, like I said, don't have Judge Ho's decision on whether to dismiss the criminal charges against Eric Adams, he did actually issue a ruling in this case on another matter this past week. Remember when Emile Beauvais said he had a bunch of evidence to support the idea that the old prosecutor in the Eric Adams case, Damian Williams, the U.S. Attorney General in New York, was politically motivated, and that's why the charges should be dismissed? And he quoted all this evidence. And he filed, well, the DOJ at least, Emile Beauvais, filed all that evidence as exhibits under seal. And then the media was like, you got to show us that, bro. And like Trump's DOJ was like, nuh-uh. And the judge was like, yeah. So the Trump administration, like I said, they fought it. They said they shouldn't have to make their evidence against Damian Williams public, probably because it's weak ass shit and totally taken out of context, right?
Yep.
So the judge denied Trump's motion to keep it under seal and has ordered it to be released to the public on the public docket with only minimal redactions. Only names and phone numbers can be redacted. And he's made that order. If the appeals court doesn't block his order to reveal all that stuff, the evidence has to be filed publicly by March 25th, which is tomorrow for us and yesterday for you. So we'll cover that in detail when we get it. And, we'll talk about what happens by the 25th deadline. We'll briefly cover it on the bonus episode for patrons this weekend.
Are you surprised by how long it's taking Judge Ho to render his decision?
I am surprised by that.
I am too. Now,
I did learn that little case that I was just talking about where Trump wanted to keep the shit under seal and I'm always used to the government being the good guys. They're the bad guys now.
Yeah.
And the plaintiffs were like, no, you got to show it to us. I think the media, I think it was maybe New York Times, was like, nope, transparency, court transparency. You got to file it publicly. The DOJ is like, no, we don't. It's really good evidence, but we don't want to show it to you. that whole case wasn't fully briefed until a few days ago. Like, I think maybe the 18th or the 19th of March. And so Judge Ho couldn't give his ruling in the dismissal motion until that little subsection was fully briefed. And so, because at first I was like, why are we March 7th was when the amicus was filed. Why is it taking so long? Apparently they had to brief on that sealed shit that we didn't know about until a few days ago. And now it's fully briefed. And he's actually said, the judge has said, all right, we're fully briefed on all this shit now. And so now he's been deliberating this for 5 or 6 days. From my count, at least as we're recording this on Monday. It'll be about a week when you hear it on Wednesday.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just curious to see where it's going to go. I know a lot of people, but one thing that you just said that stood out the most to me, it's reality is the DOJ, the government's the bad guy here, and we're used to them being, kind of the good guy. Yeah, the government has its flaws, and I'm all for fixing up, I wouldn't say corruption, but waste and fraud. I mean, I think everybody is, but the government being the bad guy is it's eye-opening.
I'm used to calling like
real.
Jack Smith is the government. Like, the government said this, the government does that. Like for the last 4 years, I've been like, the government is Jack Smith and the Rad Dudes. That's my new band.
Yeah, I like that.
So it's getting hard to get myself accustomed again, like I was in the previous 4 years before Joe Biden, to talk about Trump's DOJ is the government, like not Jack Smith. It's hard habit to break. And it was so much fun while it lasted. But here we are, so. I know. And now we fucking have a bunch of dudes on a Signal bro chat talking about war plans.
Oh my gosh. Did you?
And the Atlantic journalist is sitting in there like, I don't think I'm supposed to be in here. And,
what is happening here?
And fuck. And I think the most important point that the guy from the Atlantic, the editor, brings up, Goldberg is his name, is like, hey, if they're doing this on Signal, they're not in a skiff. Because you can't bring cell phones into a skiff. You can't bring computers into a skiff.
Well, maybe. I mean, you're not supposed to, right?
So they're out there. They're could be walking around in the public
and
using
Starbucks.
Signal chat to talk about bombing Yemen.
It's insane. But again, like I said, this.
What are emails though?
Yeah, these people don't play by the rules. Not only do they not play by the rules, they're not competent.
They're idiots,
let alone qualified. So.
And no one should be surprised given the way that Donald Trump handled classified documents.
I was just about to say, is anybody really surprised that happened? I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, the press got the war plans.
Not surprised.
we laugh at it, but it's like, yeah, I know, exactly. Like,
you're talking on Signal about Signal, in disappearing chat. And a lot of really astute reporters have pointed out that the reason they're talking about their war plans on Signal is so that they can't be FOIA'd under a Freedom of Information Act request.
Well, they don't need to when they send it to the reporters.
Yeah, and also, by the way, just to let you know, Pete Hegseth, this is a dumb way to try to avoid being FOIA'd, because if you are having war plan discussions, those are exempt from FOIA requests. Classified shit is exempt from FOIA requests. It's not like the New York Times can be like, hey, what's your war plan, bro? And if you sent security emails about it or discussed it in a skiff, we would have to turn it over. So this is just recklessness, carelessness. It's illegal as fuck.
In Hegseth's defense, he may have been drunk.
He might have been drunk,
let's have a little grace here. I mean, this is a stressful job. I'm sure he poured a little cold one,
Secretary of in his defense.
Yeah, I like that. Oh man, that's funny. So
what a dickbag.
Yeah.
And then he was yelling at a judge for Judge Reyes for blocking the transgender ban. He's like,
telling him to come down and train the SEALs and stuff.
What do you know about war plans, lady? It's like, I don't have to know shit about war plans to know that what you did is illegal.
Exactly.
How about you come and tell me, just give me one study that backs up your determination that transgender people are dishonest and disloyal or whatever the fuck you're feeling. Because I love the fact that Judge Reyes was like, you attached 6 different studies and white papers about paper straws to your order banning paper straws. Now you want to ban people from the military and you haven't even attached one white paper. He's like, I think that transgender service members deserve at least as much consideration as a paper straw when we're talking about banning shit.
Speaking of transgendered people, one of the things that when they talk about the kids in school getting sex changes at schools and stuff like that, I of course, we all know, us reasonable people all know that it's complete bull. But I actually, you've seen tweets all along that people say, hey, my kid can't even get a Tylenol or an aspirin at school. And I actually had that proven true. The nurse called me the other day and said my daughter had a stomach ache. And they said, hey, Mr. Dunn, we are all out of Pepto. Is it okay if we give your daughter some Imodium? And I was like, sure. Like that's where like her stomach was aching after lunch or whatever. So let alone a sex change, like getting an Imodium at the school is just crazy.
Yeah, but you're in like a super red area. Oh wait, no, you're in Washington. Yeah,
no, it's liberal as hell here.
Yeah, I was kidding. I was being facetious. Because that would be MAGA's next argument.
Yeah.
Anyway, just like now everybody who we do like, not that this wasn't already ruined because of what Trump did with classified documents.
Yeah.
But and then Hegseth, somebody, posted more classified information and online, and now it's just like, well, if there was any modicum of agreement to share intelligence with our allies left, if there was any bit of that left, that's totally gone.
It's gone now, so
it's gone.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to our show. We really appreciate you. Thanks to our new patrons. We're going to start divvying up our Hall of Fame patrons starting on next week's episode. We'll be back in your ears this weekend with our bonus. Do you have any final thoughts, my friend?
No, I'm just doing the work. Like I said, good for you this weekend, being out there at that empty chair. And listen, there's an appetite for it. You said there were over 800 people there, which is phenomenal. That's great. So there's an appetite. People want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be amongst people. So that's why I'm getting out and headed back out to Wisconsin. I think this is trip number 4 or 3 or 4 since January. So let's get out there and let's get Susan Crawford across the finish line, and let's help her beat Elon Musk and them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing in that race. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you,
the rest
my
of us
friend.
do too, because we got our fingers crossed for Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So that they don't slide back and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, we'll be back in your ears next week. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Allison Gill.
Harry Dunn. Thanks, y'all.
Cleanup on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill, with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.